Now we'll discuss about how to work with the throw keyword regarding exception handling. Then we'll move on to throws keyword. Then we'll discuss about finally block. Right. So we'll start with the throw keyword in Java. So whenever an exception is raised inside a try block or any other block of code, by default it will be thrown automatically, right? So in terms of default or system generated exceptions, the exception is thrown automatically. Apart from that, if you wish, you can throw an exception by your own with the help of throw keyword. And the general syntax of writing a throw in the sense, so you have to use the keyword throw. Then you have to, after that, you have to pass an object of a particular exception type. So if it is a predefined exception type, you have to create an object and you have to pass it. So this is how we'll throw an exception manually. And then exception type must be of a subclass of throwable, as we discussed in the exception hierarchy. Throwable is a parent of all the exception classes. So here I have a main method, and inside a main we are reading an argument from the command line, and we are checking whether if it is less than 18 we are going to throw arithmetic exception. If it is greater than 60, and we are throwing arithmetic exception, right? So if you want to manually throw, this is a keyword throw should be the keyword. After that you have to pass the instance type of a particular exception class. So here we are creating an instance with a new keyword, new arithmetic exception. So this is a constructor. So in this line you are creating an instance for the particular exception type. So here you are using the constructor without any argument. Here we are using a constructor with an argument. So you can use any type of constructor for invoking the predefined exception type, either no argument, or you can pass your own description about an error. So here we have passed a description about an error, that is employee is retired. If it is greater than or equal to 60, probably he is a retired employee, and we have corresponding catch for it, and we are printing it. And the last println statement, that is after the try and catch block statement. So for the given case, if the argument is less than 18, it will throw the arithmetic exception and the catch block will be executed. Then after catch will be printed. Suppose if the age is greater than or equal to 60, the same arithmetic exception will be thrown with a customized message, employee is retired, and after catch will be printed. So this is how we use the throw keyword in Java. And this is for a simple match the following. So we have to match column A data with column B. So what is an exception? An exception is an event that can disrupt the normal flow of execute instruction. So for option A, you have to match it with the option C in the column B. And what is throwable? So this is a class is at the top of the exception hierarchy. So the throwable class is at top of your hierarchy. Then arithmetic exception, it is caused by dividing an integer by 0. So that is the reason behind arithmetic exception. Catch block, what is a catch block? So catch block is an exception handler. What is throw? So throw is to throw an exception explicitly. So for option E, you have to match it with option A, used to throw an exception explicitly. So what is wrong with the given code? So we have an import statement, and we have a class with a method, void method, and it throws the IO exception. So IO exception is a type of checked exception, and inside that we are simply throwing an IO exception without checking anything. So whenever we invoke this method, it will throw IO exception. And here we are creating object for the particular class, and we are trying to invoke the method, right? So for the given case, IO exception is a checked exception. So here we are invoking it, but that method always throws IO exception. So inside, so at this line, we should handle the IO exception. Just directly you are invoking it, in this line you will get IO exception. So here you should have try and block. So this is wrong with the given code. I will discuss about user-defined exception. So in Java, there are plenty of predefined exception classes are there. Apart from that, as a programmer, if you want, you can create your own exception type also. So there are certain cases where you need your own exception type for handling a specific type of exception, and moreover the exception provides you the meaningful description for the error or a runtime error which is specific to your application, right? For example, if you are creating an application for handling the eligibility of voting application, and then you can have certain user defined exception where it may have some uh, descriptive information about the application specific data, and we will see for the given scenario how to use our user defined exception classes, right? And for creating user defined exception, you have to create your own class, and that class should be a child of your exception class. In that case, you have to inherit all the properties of an exception class inside your class, and you have to override the toString method. Inside the toString method, you have to provide a description about an exception. So for the given case, this is a simple class that describes the user-defined exception. So here we are creating a class myException, and that is extending exception class. In that case, exception is a parent and myException is a child. And here we have a constructor which is going to print user-defined exception is thrown. And I have a toString method. Inside toString method, we are attaching a description about your exception. So here it is going to return a string that is going to describe your exception. So here in the string we are returning something like my exception object age cannot be less than 18. So from the description itself, the developer or the user can identify what type of error they have made inside their application. So this is how we create user defined exception in Java. And this is a corresponding main class where we are going to handle it. So here we are reading an integer from the command line argument, and if it is less than 18, we are manually throwing an exception type. So with the help of throw keyword, you can manually throw it. So throw new exception type. So here after throw keyword, we are passing an instance type of a myException class. Here myException class, myException is a user defined exception class, and in the catch section we are handling we have multiple catches over here. The first catch is going to handle array index of the bounds exception, and the second catch is meant for number format exception, and the third catch is meant for our user defined exception class. So likewise, you can handle user defined exception class which is similar to that of a predefined class in Java. So yeah, you can have a try block where you have to manually throw an exception type, and you should have an equivalent catch statement for handling a specific exception type. So here the given task is you have to complete the code to print a message invalid input. So here we have an exception user defined exception class invalid input exception, and we have a constructor with one argument. So here we have to insert our code, and this is the actual class input with a method which is going to throw invalid exception. So here we are reading we are passing invalid input as an argument for the constructor type. So in that case, this line will invoke this constructor. So in this constructor you have to attach your statement. So we'll see what should be done. So then we have another class test input with the main method, and here we are going to invoke a method of an input class. So this method always throws invalid input exception. So we are putting it inside a try and catch. So inside a try, we are invoking input of an exception input dot method of a method, and we have an equivalent catch statement. So in this exception type, inside the constructor, So we are inheriting all the properties of an exception class. So here we are reading an argument also. So here you should invoke the superclass constructor with the help of super keyword that internally display the argument you are passing inside this statement. So inside this statement you are passing invalid input. So in this line, if you insert super off, then the invalid input gets printed over here. So the get message method will return the corresponding message which is being returned by the exception class. So here super of s. So here s represents the argument argument s. So you are directly passing the argument inside of super. So the get message method will fetch you the customized message which we are passing it through this statement, throw new invalid input exception of invalid input. So what will be the output for the given code? So here we are creating our own exception class by extending exception, and here we have a parameterized constructor, and we have a toString method for attaching the string. So here we are inside the try block, we are throwing a corresponding exception type. And inside the catch we are handling by exception handler, then we are printing e. So inside the try block then exception is thrown, so this will invoke the parameterized constructor of the exception class. So the argument is being passed to str2. So from str2 we are assigning the argument to str1, and whenever you print the exception type, internally that will invoke the toString method of the corresponding exception class. So after executing toString method, this exception line gets printed. So this is an equivalent output for the given code. Now we'll come back to throws class in Java. So later session we discussed about throw keyword. Now we'll discuss about throws. So throws, which allows you to handle the exception in a different way. Sometimes if you feel that your method is unable to handle or is not capable of handling an exception type, you can simply throw it to some other place so that you can handle it somewhere else. So you can avoid a method to handle the exception by itself. Instead you can use the keyword throws so that somebody else will handle the exception for you, right? So for usage of throws, you can have type method name, then you can have a list of argument list. After that you can attach throws keyword. So throws of, you can have n number of exception if you can pass the comma as a separator. So for the given case, we have a class with a method, and inside that we are throwing file not found exception, right? So, and we have a main method, and we are trying to invoke the throw one method. So what is wrong with the throw a new file not found exception? So here you will get a compile time error because you are throwing it here but you are not handling it anywhere, right? So either you have to attach a try catch inside this method, or you have to attach a throw statement in the method declaration. So if you leave it like this, you will get a compile time error because you are not handling the exception thrown by the throw one method. So this is how we implement throws. So there is a method throw one, here attaching the throw statement, throws of file not found exception. So inside this method you are manually throwing file not found exception, and inside the main method we are invoking throw one. So by default this throw one method always throw file not found exception. So make sure that you are handling it inside try and catch. So that is why we have put it inside try and catch. So inside a catch we are attaching file not found exception. So in the given code we are invoking throw one that will raise file not found exception, which is being handled in the given catch statement. So this is how we use throws keyword in Java. And moreover, whenever we apply method overriding, ensure that you are using throws with a proper understanding, right? For example, a method declares an SQL exception. It is there in a parent class, which is going to throw SQL exception. But inside a child class, if you are trying to override it, ensure that you are not throwing any of parent class exception type. For example, IO exception or any other exception until it is a subclass of SQL exception. So suppose a parent is throwing, so parent method is throws some exception type. So in overriding, ensure that you are overriding the same method with the throws, and the exception type should be of same type or it subclass type. So we'll see how we will handle it. So whenever you perform overriding, the throws keyword must be carefully used for checked exception type. For unchecked exception type, you don't need to worry about the exception class, because you have to worry a lot about checked exception class. So this will throw compile time error. Why? So here we have a class super with a method m1. Here we are throwing file not found exception, and in class subclass we are overriding it. So in overriding, I am using same return type, same method name, but in throws I have used IO exception, right? And here we are working something about file input stream. We are reading something inside file. Here also we are reading something inside a file, right? So what is wrong with that given code? So here IO exception is a parent and file not found exception is a child class, right? So you are trying to override it. So during overriding, either you can use the same exception class, or you can use subclass of file not found exception. You should not use parent of file not found exception during overriding. So this will raise a compile time error. So if you reverse it, so in superclass we are throwing IO exception, in subclass we are throwing file not found exception. So this is not a problem. Why? Because in parent we are throwing IO exception, and file not found exception is a subclass of IO. So in overriding, you can throw the same exception type, or you can use subclasses of your exception type. So this is a valid statement. Why? Because file not found exception is a subclass of IO exception. So here we have in the first M1 method we are throwing arithmetic exception, and in overriding you are using number format exception. So both the exception are runtime exception, or you can say unchecked exception. So unchecked exception makes no sense in overriding concept in Java. So here we have in superclass in M1 method we have file not found exception, and in subclass we have an SQL exception. So here SQL exception is not a child of a file not found. So this will raise a compile time error. Now we'll discuss about the usage of finally block. So whenever an exception comes, which may raise inside a try block, and if the exception is throws, then the corresponding catch block may run, right? So whenever an exception occurs inside your application, then the execution flow will become non-linear. So there are certain portion of code may not be executed whenever an exception comes into your application. But if you wish, there are certain set of codes which should always run irrespective of the exception. In that case, you can go for finally block. So the finally block is guaranteed to execute in any type of circumstance. Even the execution raise inside the application, then the finally block run. Even if there are no exception also, the finally block get executed. So the finally block is always guaranteed that it will be executed at least once. So here we have a static method with the throws file not found exception, and inside that we are throwing file not found exception and we have a finally block. So while writing try and catch, you can go with one more combination. Every try should have either catch or finally. So without catch and finally, you cannot write try in Java. So whenever you write try block, either you can have a matching finally or a matching catch block. So here we have written a code with the finally. So whenever an error comes or not, the finally block will be definitely executed. So this is another way of writing finally. Here also we are writing try with the finally. So here there is no exception at all, but the finally block will be executed once. So that is about finally block. And in Java there is a predefined method print stack trace. So this method allows you to fetch certain additional description about your exception type. So this is useful while debugging your code in Java. So if you want to use it, you can use exception object dot print stack trace. So this will gives you certain detailed description about your exception. So we'll look at the output. So likewise you will get some detailed description. So exception, the description starts with main method of line number 5, then method m1 at line number 16, then method m2 at line number 20, then method m3 at line number 24. So likewise you will get some detailed description with the line number, so that you can debug your application in a better way. So this will throw a compile time error. Why? So we'll try to analyze the code. So there is a class tester with a method. So inside that we are manually throwing an exception type, and we have a main. So here we are invoking a method, right? And there is a catch of throwable something. So here we are manually throwing an exception, right? So in that case you have to attach either try and catch, or you have to use the throws keyword. So there is something wrong with the given code. Then inside a catch we have throwable. So throwable is a parent, so it will catch any kind of exception. So inside a catch you have a try with a new exception of type. Here we have an equivalent catch, this is going to handle, and the finally block run. So in the given method you have to attach either try and catch, or you have to put throws statement.